What's up, Defiance? It is Don and Troy on ETF approval day.
Let's go.
We did it.
Yes.
We are excited. We are even more excited because we have a huge guest today that's going to be zooming in studio, and we're going to talk to in a little bit. We have Poker Hall of Famer, 2023 inductee. And again, I want to reiterate how much of an achievement that is. They only induct one person per year of all the poker players in the world. And we're going to have Brian Rast, the 2023 Poker Hall of Famer. He is a 6-time WSOP bracelet winner. He's 30th on an all-time poker winnings list. He was born in Denver, Colorado, raised in Poway, California. He attended Stanford University before dropping out to pursue a career full-time in poker in 2004. Worked out pretty well for him as he's 30th on the all-time list of winners for poker. And I'm pretty excited about this.
Yeah,
what about you?
I'm excited. This is a historic moment, is the ETF, and having this guest on. He's also a big Bitcoiner, so I'm looking forward to dive into some theory and some strategy and, his thought process on today's ETF day.
Yeah, so I'm excited to hear what he's got to say, man.
Let's go.
Let's get into it, kid. Yeah. So I'm very curious. I read your article that you put up on brianrast.com, and I'm curious. You're a very successful poker player, Poker Hall of Famer. Congratulations, 2023 inductee.
Thanks.
I am very curious how. I played a little poker back in the day, so I know like poker players like to degen and investments and stuff like that. So I do know some poker players that are into Bitcoin and crypto and stuff like that. But I'm very curious how you in your poker mind got into this and viewed this asset. And
sure, yeah. I probably don't want to give too many specifics.
Sure.
Like on air. I'm happy to
no problem
be a little bit like on there. I don't really want to be like, I had like fucking millions of dollars.
Don't got to talk about money. Just how you got in the space.
So, that was like sitting around in boxes, and I'm like, and then this, and then I start going the rabbit hole. But yeah, no, it's one of those things where, man, it's like 2017 is when I got in.
Okay.
When I started, I think my first purchase, I think I have 1 or 2 purchases below 2,000 from like spring of 2017. So that was when I first started. But it was like one of those things where once I got involved, I just fell down the rabbit hole. And, I should probably save a little bit, save it for basically, started out and I was kind of, I mostly was buying Bitcoin and Ethereum, but I was on exchanges and I was like reading about all these other coins and it was like, oh, this is a good idea. This is a good idea. And then by the top, I was already kind of like not that into most of the other projects. I kind of, John Pfeffer, an institutional investor, I've actually met him and hung out with him a few times, wrote this paper on crypto assets. And he had this interesting argument about like why maybe Ethereum isn't like a store of value and it's going to be valued in a different way. And I kind of made a lot of sense to me. And then I started to realize a bunch of other problems about to me that are inherent in a lot of these other crypto assets, if you want to call them that. And then basically I was like, how can I get the fuck out of these after it started going down? And then I kind of waited. And then in the spring of 2018, everything mooned again. It was kind of like the fucking get out. It was, for me, it was like the get out of all these shit coins thing. Now, obviously I didn't get out of my Bitcoin. I never sold that. And it kept going down for the next year or whatever. But it went down way less than all the other coins. So I did very well. I actually did very well. A lot of the coins, I put like 5 Bitcoin into the fucking Cardano or this other thing and traded them very well. That was one of my trading success stories. Basically, I've done really well trading when it hasn't been on margin. But then when it's been like margin, I've had a lot of, man, I've been right and just got fucking liquidated like at the bottom or whatever and just been like, fuck. But I put in a lot of time learning, whatever. But my investment thesis, at some point after that, I was basically holding only Bitcoin for like a couple years until I got into ETH. And that was a very good trade as well, ETH. And then some of the ETH I put into CryptoPunks. And it's like most of the way that I think about, listen, if you don't have very much money it can make sense, I think, to try to like trade alts to like, let's say, try to get more Bitcoin. Basically, I mean, Bitcoin's it, and I'm happy to like. That's a conversation for when we're on the air, and I can give you like why I think is, and I don't think it's the only asset that's going to succeed in the crypto space, but there's I think a very good reason why it's like the best way that you should hold your money in crypto.
We talk about that
Right?
all the
And
time.
I'll say that.
Yeah, we talk
But
about
like,
that all the time. Yeah.
I do think there will be a bunch of projects that succeed. I think if you spend a lot of time researching and whatever, like when I say time, it's like part-time job plus. So like this is something that you're doing consistently, you're following everything, you're in there. This is not what most people are going to do. Then, you know, should you diversify and like be in and out of projects? Maybe a few you hold. Yes. A lot of them you should mostly even trade, even if you do believe in them, because the way, and you were saying this, the way the like market works with a lot of these projects is like fucking bananas and has nothing to do with the fundamentals. Like people write white papers, which are essentially like theses, and then all of a sudden it's like hundreds of $1,000,000 like flow into these things before anyone does anything. And then the people who wrote the paper are rich and no one has to do anything. And the projects involve like these really complicated technical things that would take years to work. And like everyone who would be doing it is already kind of rich. It's like the dumbest thing ever. And so I like, listen, some of the stuff will end up working and doing something. But like a lot of the way, you know, a lot of the valuation, what's happening with the coin economics, I think is just not that good. And to me, in an environment where you're already talking about like massive multiples up with like Bitcoin works out, and it's just like so much more likely than like there's not really a world where Bitcoin doesn't work out, but like these other projects do. I think that's very unlikely. It's kind of like there's going to be the world where Bitcoin works out most of the time, and then out of that, a lot of the other projects will work. Some of them will work out, but it's so easy to compete. Like every good idea in crypto has like 10 other copycats that come out within a year that are trying to do the same thing. And a lot of them, you know, there might be a couple winners or like one main winner, right?
Yeah. My issue with these the crypto coins is the fact that there's a single point of failure with all. I mean, they all have projects with founders and they have people that have high amounts of coins. I mean, I know you got your Michael Saylor, but even Michael Saylor only has 1%. I mean, the Ethereum Foundation holds an exorbitant amount of Ethereum. Cardano, go right down the line, and these founders hold exorbitant amounts of these coins, and you're at the mercy of them saying something, tweeting something, doing something that makes these prices just, you know, cascade. Whereas with Bitcoin, all the great properties that it has, and we can talk about all of that, but like the fact that Satoshi either is dead, which I personally believe, but that's another conversation, or is this great human that just completely walked away from billions of dollars and this great innovation, and we don't have to worry about him or her or they coming into the space and making these decisions that will affect, at this point, with Wall Street being involved, like, you know, global events, global liquidity and stuff.
Are we on?
Yeah, we're going. Yeah, we're going now. Yeah.
Oh, let's go on. Yeah. Let's save this. But yeah, I mean, I agree. But I think most of the other coins aren't really trying to be money in the same way Bitcoin is. Like they're trying to do a specific like thing in the market. I think any that are trying to be money are just trying dead with Bitcoin. I agree with you for a billion reasons. But like, I mean, I think when you're investing in other crypto projects, for the most part, you're like, hey, it's trying to do this like particular economic function, you know, as a decentralized version on some like L1, like on Ethereum or on Solana or whatever. Anyway, whatever. Let's go on because this is a conversation we should be having, like as the podcast. You know.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So, what do you think? Well, you talked a little bit about NFTs and Bored Apes and stuff like that. What do you think about this whole ordinal on the blockchain and minor fees and this whole discussion that's being had with Tap Wizards and all that kind of stuff? What do you think about that? How do you feel about that as a I'm assuming you sound more like how I am, more like I'm a Bitcoin maxi. I mean, I don't go hardcore toxic like a lot of the guys go on Twitter, but I believe Bitcoin's the best asset and I don't really hold anything else but that when it comes to crypto assets. But I'm curious how you feel about the ordinals.
Yeah, like I'm not a maxi. I do own Bitcoin and I do own some CryptoPunks. But I'm probably closer to a Bitcoin maxi than most people in crypto, right? But I'm not like a maxi in that sense. I mean, the first question about the ordinals right now, I don't have any. I think it's interesting. It's I mean, it has clogged up the block space a little bit, but it's like one of these things where Bitcoin's going to do what it does, and one of the kind of beautiful things about Bitcoin is like being very careful to change it, right? Like, I actually just listened to a Sailor podcast where he talks about this a lot, but like one of his main points on the podcast, and I like think it's a very good point, is that it's like, listen, Bitcoin as designed right now is probably going to be like worth 20x, 40x, whatever it is today, in so many years. And if we don't change a thing, so it's like, and once you start saying, hey, this one person has this good idea, let's update it, you're already taking like risk of the update not working out and failure. He gives an example on the podcast where like 737, the engineers were like, we're going to change this thing, and did the 737 Max, and then like a bunch of airplanes crashed, like due to the change that they made. It's like, do we really want to risk that happening with Bitcoin when basically it's already won and it's already going to work out? It's kind of dumb, right? Just to like do something better, which by the way, every change that you make, even if it does one thing better, it'll cost someone else something else. Like even the SegWit update, for example, which probably most people think is good, it still cost miners fees, right? So there's always like a give and take with anything, even if you think you're making an upgrade. So just like, it's kind of a long way of saying like, we probably shouldn't really change Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's doing this thing right now with the ordinals, and there are drawbacks to it happening, along with possible benefits of people finding value in that. I'm not really fucking around with it, for now at least, but I think it's interesting, and I just love to see the way Bitcoin evolves, and I just think in general we should not be in a rush to change it for the reason I just gave.
Yeah, I generally agree with you. The only drawback that I see, like people like that we know, just like regular normal people that DCA into Bitcoin, they might buy $100 here, $200 there, then they want to take it off the exchange to put into self custody. Sometimes you buy $100 worth of Bitcoin and you want to send it to your cold storage. Half of it's going to be eaten up in fees, and it's just not even worth doing it. And it's kind of discouraging to some people. That's the part that is a little bothersome for me. But everything you said, I kind of agree with.
I do get it, and I do think that it becomes more a problem like the longer it goes, where the base gets clogged up and the fees stay high. So far throughout its history, it's been where when this has happened, it's managed to be resolved within a short period of time. But yeah, if it sticks around this way, then at some point there will be a discussion about that, because I mean, listen, like, what should Bitcoin be used for? I do think transaction on the main chain at some point, it might not make sense to do small transactions, right? That said, do we really want like $20 fees? Like, that seems pretty high. I mean, there's like a big room between, sometimes when the fees were cheap before, it'd be like 15 cents, which is amazing, right? Versus like 20, $30, right? There's a lot of area between there. So I don't know. And I don't really want to, I don't have a strong opinion about that right now, and definitely not an opinion about like what we should do or not. It just more generally, my philosophy would be we should tend to do nothing. And if we do decide to do something, we should be very careful about what we decide to do, because, Bitcoin works great. And I mean, to me, I think one of the kind of existential risks is we implement some change and something unforeseen goes wrong, it stops working for a while or whatever, then all of a sudden there kind of becomes this argument like, maybe like we should use something else instead of Bitcoin, right? I mean, I think as long as Bitcoin has this, like every 10 minutes or so, it just prints the next block or whatever, there's going to be a lot of room for maybe fees a little too high here or something, or these little problems is fine. But if it's like it stops running and this continuity of like digital age of permanence cathedral building ends for a while for whatever reason, now you're fucking with it on like an existential level. Like, people will leave because It's not operating as this like digital, permanent cathedral in a digital age, like just storing, the transactions. So just that, but like I don't have a specific opinion about the ordinals themselves or
Okay.
what we should do.
I'm gonna ask one question, then I'll let you ask some questions. I got in December of 2013 when I first got into Bitcoin. In 14, 15, my first couple of years, Roger Ver was like, they called him Bitcoin Jesus. He was like one of the guys in the space. And you got in 2017. I don't know if you were there for the block size wars or what time period you got in, but Roger really,
Yeah, that was early. Yeah,
yeah,
2017 is when I got in. So
yeah,
that was like early. And I didn't actually realize how big it was. Like I knew it was something. It's like, oh, I guess it's probably regular in Bitcoin or whatever. Now it's like with history, you're like, wow, that was like a big fucking
huge
moment in
event.
Bitcoin's
Yeah.
history. Actually, anyway,
Yeah.
continue.
So, Roger, he forks off into Bitcoin Cash because he really has the thesis that Bitcoin is currency. He wants it peer to peer. He wants it to be low cost, like kind of a little bit of what we just talked about. But he's really focused on the peer to peer aspect, where the other side was like store of value, and you have these two segments. Even still, those that are in Bitcoin and didn't necessarily drift off into Bitcoin Cash, believing that Bitcoin is still a currency. And for me, my personal thesis where I believe, like, I don't spend Bitcoin. I just stack and I just hold. So for me, it's a store of value, but I understand that Bitcoin can be many different things to many different people. I don't own it. It's not my protocol. It's just how I choose to hold mine. So I can see both sides of it, but I'm curious how you view, because you mentioned currency a little bit earlier, but how do you view it? Peer to peer, store of value, combination of both? What are your thoughts?
I mean, the market decided, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Bitcoin was what everybody as a whole chose it to be, right? It could have gone the other way, but
Mm-hmm.
people made their choice. Personally, I was very young in Bitcoin. To me, even then, the whatever the small block size seemed uh, the better path. And I think I still agree with that in the future. I also kind of agree that Bitcoin can be kind of many things to many people. Another example of this would be now today with the ETF discussion, where ETF, you're not self-custodying. And obviously that is one of the big arguments for a lot of, especially like longtime Bitcoiners, like not your keys, not your coins, right? Like, I think that self-custody is great. I mean, like Bitcoin, it's the only unconfiscatable asset you own, right? I mean, listen, obviously other coins could
Talk about
kind of
that a
fit
lot.
like that
Yeah.
if you want to consider them, but right now, just Bitcoin versus normal, like non-crypto assets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's take that out of the fray. But I just want to acknowledge that. But it's like, so it's unconfiscatable in a way that like nothing else you own is actually, and that's only if you manage your own security.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is that, and while that's awesome, and there's going to be so many people all around the world, especially like in authoritarian governments and this and whatever reasons they have why they might want that particular feature of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's like this Swiss Army knife of functionality where it's going to kind of be different things to different people. Like some people don't need certain aspects of it or might just want it for the financial exposure or whatever, don't really care about that. And that's up to them and that's fine. So to me, it's kind of like the ETF is great because now a bunch of people who aren't that interested in self-custodying for a variety of reasons, including like they don't trust themselves with it, they don't feel technically savvy, they don't care enough, but now we'll be able to access Bitcoin in order to have financial exposure. And that's also kind of part of the way that you orange pill people anyways. Like you get and people only stats and other people like they'll learn more and maybe at some point we'll start self-custodying for other reasons in the future. It's all kind of like part of the mix. And so Bitcoin's always going to be different things to different people based on like what you want it to be. Even another example of this real fast is going to be like, you know, it does a really great job of international remittance, right? So like what El Salvador is doing is kind of genius if you
Beautiful.
really think about it,
Mm-hmm.
because like basically Western Union and those type of companies like just fuck people with the fees and this and all the conversions, and like international remittance is like something like it's in the article I just read that I it's on my blog and I linked on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's like 20 to 25 to 30% of like their GDP or some crazy number like that, because people like
Getting
it's a
gouged.
poor country.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
People leave, they go somewhere else, they work, they send the money home to their family. Like basically through Bitcoin, now it's legal tender in El Salvador. They make a Lightning network. So literally people who are doing this and sending money back are sending it back for free. If they send Bitcoin back, it's free. It's like a way to circumvent that whole system to like not have this massive tax on your people that goes to these corporations that aren't in your country. It's like, so, I don't really use Bitcoin for that, right? Like I'm not doing international remittance, but so I'm just saying that there's a whole bunch of like potential use cases that Bitcoin can have, and I'm going to stop listing them now, but like there's more. And it's different things to different people, and that's great. That's part of the Swiss Army knife part of it.
Yeah, I agree. Like we know somebody in Nigeria that we talked to that like for him, and I'm assuming same thing in El Salvador. Like for these people, it is a currency. Like they are peer to peer transacting way more than anybody that we know here is doing. And it's like I said, it's Bitcoin is what you make it, and that's the part that I love about this space. The stuff that the only thing about Bitcoin that ever like makes me sad or even gets me angry at any point is like the maximalists that want you to think, feel, act a certain way, and if you veer off that script, then you get like we go into a lot of spaces on Twitter, and if you go into certain spaces, these guys will and I've been here forever, so like I'm grizzled, like I've heard everything, been through everything. You're not gonna get me, but I think about the people coming in for the first time that are like, oh, this Bitcoin thing, or they might have heard about the ETF, and this is their first experience, and then they see this guy just telling them they got to think, feel, and act a certain way, and they're like, man, I thought there was a revolution going on. This don't sound like a revolution. It sounds like a dictatorship, and that's the part that I don't like about the space. One of the very few things.
Yeah, listen. There's a wide range. I mean, I think some of them are just like way too aggressive and over the top. Some of the ones that are even aggressive over the top, nevertheless, have a lot of like brilliant things to say.
Agreed.
I mean, like for example, there's a guy who, what's his, the Fight Club poster or whatever. That guy, the guy tweets a lot of Bitcoin stuff sometimes. One of his tweets, he uses like the Brad Pitt whatever from
Zero
Fight
Hedge.
Club. Is this like
Zero Hedge?
Yes.
Yeah.
Zero Hedge tweeted some article on Bitcoin a while ago. And then like it ended up being this guy Svetsky, who's like a long time kind of
Bitcoin magazine. He's on Bitcoin magazine
exactly.
Staff. Yeah.
But he even has like this blog and he writes
Toxic.
a lot of articles. I went read them, but like he has this article that I love that's kind of about how it might take longer than people think because Bitcoin's a generational change and it's going to involve like, basically people who were kind of set in their ways dying and like their kids and this. So it's like, more like a 40-year thing. And I loved this article that he wrote. Like I just was so aligned with it in a lot of different ways. And it's like kind of like some of you are gonna think like I'm changing my mind and I'm bearish. It's not that. I think it's gonna take a lot longer than some of us Bitcoin bulls think. But that over a really long time frame, I don't think enough of us are really prepared for like how big Bitcoin might end up being. And like there's some ideas with that which I don't even know what I really think about it because it's like trying to imagine the world 40 years from now and what the potential changes are going to be. It's like, wow, like is like real estate going to become like a layer that trades on the Bitcoin fucking blockchain, and like Bitcoin really is like world. I mean, like the
hyper Bitcoinization.
Like, fiat currencies go away because governments keep defaulting and are not paying their debt because of financial irresponsibility and all this. It's like, I don't know, man. Like, it's definitely possible. I'm not sure I believe it's going to go. Like, what I believe is very, very likely going to happen, which is still like a mega X from here, is like the gold market cap or bigger. Like, because it says a lot of what gold does, plus international remittance, offshore banking, like, not just a store of value for individuals, but also
like Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy, putting them on their balance sheets. Yeah,
like
sovereign wealth funds. Sovereign wealth funds.
Yeah, I don't even know. It's not sovereign wealth funds, but it's like when countries like how they buy and keep other currencies. Like I think the GTO solution for this is like, okay, so like Russia, right? Like Russia keeps as like a asset, it keeps dollars.
Right.
But look what happened when we declared. Like when we had a problem with Russia over Ukraine, we just froze all that money and kept what we could. And it's like, there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't make sense. Sort of, it's like you'd rather have the money that you're storing be something that no other country controls rather than something another country controls. Bitcoin's just not even close to big enough. It's like so much smaller than the dollar and won right now that it's like doesn't really make sense for large countries to do that.
Market
but like that's something I think is like very likely to happen in like 10 plus years. But like the next step where what's it called, like not maxi, but it's like super or whatever, when like Bitcoin becomes like the
hyper Bitcoinization.
Like that one, it's like that one, I think the probability starts coming down. It's possible, but like I'm not sure.
That's the Max Kaiser view.
And if it is, like it's probably going to be, I'm 42. Like hyper Bitcoinization probably wouldn't happen in my lifetime, or if so, I'm gonna be a very old man.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So anyway,
I just think the inevitability of the money printing is just like we're at a stage now. The debt's so high, they can't do anything but print their way out of it. So that's just going to keep this thing rocketing off for the next couple cycles, in my opinion. I don't want to keep hijacking.
Well,
yeah.
They could, by the way, but they won't.
Oh yeah.
Because listen, man, I'm the older I've gotten, the less it's like democracy is the greatest thing in the world. Listen, there's a lot of perverse incentives with politicians. And the truth is, like, politicians are just not incentivized in democracy, especially like very large ones, especially ones that are polarized like ours, to like make good, like long-term decisions. Like they don't care. So, and one of the long-term decisions comes down to like spending less money, like balancing the budget. The last time we had a balanced budget was like President Clinton's for like 2 years, right? So we could have some fiscal austerity, but the truth is that's not going to happen. And so the only other, we have to inflate, right? Because I actually didn't realize how big the interest was getting until I wrote this article. Like the number in my mind was like smaller than when I wrote this article, because I would reference it and stuff like 2 years ago. And then I just wrote this article that I posted on my Twitter. And it's like, wow, it was like the fourth biggest discretionary spending item now. It's like 10%, and it had gone, and it just had a massive growth from, it was like 400 billion to like 600 billion. It's just crazy. And that money essentially just disappears. That money that just, it's like we pay taxes and that money just disappears, so that as far as our government is concerned, so that we don't default on the debt.
I got a quote.
And to me, that's like the biggest problem.
I got a quote from your article here. It says, the end game to ever increasing debt and inflation is not a pleasant one. The governments and their currencies will ultimately default. That's right from your article that you wrote, that you're referencing. And I agree with that, because we talk about that a lot on our podcast almost weekly. And I talk about Bitcoin being the best money ever created. And it's like the biggest hedge against, what we're doing here economically, which is ultimately, in my opinion, and I believe the same that you do. I'm 45, and I don't think I'll see a total collapse of the dollar in my lifetime. I just don't think it's going to happen in the next 30 years. It could. I mean, I put it maybe at 10, 20%, possibly. But I think
probably right about where you are.
Yeah.
I'm not like a doomer. I don't think this is like 5 years from now or something.
And honestly, like what I always tell people too is like, I'm not rooting for that. Like, I don't want that to happen this cycle. Like that's another thing that I digress from my other like Bitcoin friends, is like, they're looking for like total chaos and they want the dollar to fail tomorrow. And it's like, I don't want none of that, because I don't know about you, but like, I mean, I've orange pilled some of my family members, but the overwhelming majority of people I care about and love are not into Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin is the thing that's going to save everybody, they ain't getting saved. So I'm not looking for them to be in this terrible situation. They're not, ready yet for that. None of us are, even the ones that do have Bitcoin. So I think we need to like push the brakes on all that and just let things play out the way that they're playing. You got any questions, Troy?
Yeah. So you mastered poker probabilities. My question really is have you incorporated any like poker related mindsets or strategies into your approach, whether it's investing or trading into Bitcoin?
A little bit. So the way I would frame it is, I guess, like poker has kind of taught me certain things about how to think in terms of like evaluating probabilities and just like approaching that. I think a lot of people that don't do something like poker, mean, there's not that many things that are like it, but there are other things like maybe trading or something. You know, they're not very good at this idea of like thinking about future things that are going to happen as, you know, conditional kind of probability cloud. Like it's like this percent to be this or this percent to be this, right? They're a lot more binary in their thinking. Like it's either is or isn't going to happen. So, I mean, I do think that, you know, thinking about crypto and thinking about Bitcoin, I mean, that's influenced it. I also think certain things about just investing, such as the Kelly criterion. I even wrote like some kind of tweet that one of the tweets that did a little bit better like a year or two ago, like a tweet thread where I basically, the sort of argument behind it was that as the price of Bitcoin goes up, and therefore for a holder, it becomes like a larger percent of their net worth, it actually makes sense for them to also increase the percent of their net worth that is being held in Bitcoin. And I'm not necessarily saying it's commensurate, but the premise is this. It's that, like, let's say, you know, there's this idea that Bitcoin's going to do all these things and have this, you know, worth 800,000 or whatever the hell in US dollars at some point in the future. And it's like kind of on its way there. It's like, you know, there are ways that maybe it could fail. And if you wanted to go back and say like in 2014 when Bitcoin was like, you know, $300 or something, it was probably, even though if you were like, oh, from here, kind of, I know Bitcoin was thought of a little bit differently back then and also hadn't gone through some of the same tests, but let's just say it kind of has the same end game of being, let's just say $1 million Bitcoin, right? You know, and for the ease of this, let's do 100. So 100 to 1 million is like a 10,000x, right? Whereas if you go from, let's say you went from like, right around the time when Saylor was buying, and or I think it was like 10K when he first started getting in
2020,
like 2021, yeah. And now you're talking about 100x, right? And then maybe a year from now or something, it's going to be like 100K, which is only a 10x, right? It's kind of like probably the EV, all things considered, was probably best maybe when it was like $100 on the 10K, but the actual probability of Bitcoin making it to 1 million was like less. So if you wanted to, let's say it was like 20% when it was that or something, just to throw it out there. If you actually run the Kelly criterion, even at, so let's say it's 20%. And obviously this also isn't a bet that instantly resolves. It's a bet that like takes your life to resolve. So it's not pure in the sense that like as it goes, you might need to use that money elsewhere. Like the only people who can really make the bet purely like that would be an already very wealthy person. Like let's say a billionaire puts X into Bitcoin. Now they can like never touch it as this like investment they're holding on to. It doesn't really work that way for like almost anyone else. But right, you know, that aside, just looking as a bet and the Kelly criterion, it turns out that even, you know, 20% is 4 to 1. If you run this in the Kelly criterion and it's like a 10,000, something that pays 10,000 to 1, and you only have to lay 4 to 1, it actually basically it's like you should risk 20% of your net worth, because it's really what you end up seeing is it's a limit function of as it approaches the percent likelihood that the event that you win. So in other words, for like low probability events, you never do more than the probability of event occurring. And the reason why is risk of ruin, right? Or for your bankroll, because if you know, bet like your whole, you know, a lot of money, but it's a low probability event, even with a great payout, you could still likely to like lose most of the time, right? Yeah. So, you know, and so the Kelly criterion is something that I've kind of paid attention to throughout my gambling career and you know, use it to think about my thinking, and definitely has made sense to me. It's like, oh, as Bitcoin has gone up, like now that like Michael Saylor is buying and like companies are starting to buy, and now that there's an ETF and it's like the government has basically sanctioned it. It's like the US has become the biggest miner in the world. It's going to be protected by politicians, and like the SEC's allowed it. And so the regulatory risk is gone, which might not kill Bitcoin anyway, but would definitely hurt the price if it happened for a while.
Yep.
Just like all these things, like, is Bitcoin more likely to succeed now at like 40,000? Yeah, a lot. I mean, dude, it's almost like, to me, it's like almost a lock now. Agreed. I mean, you know, there are some problems, but I think most of the problems are like weird, esoteric things that you can't even really comprehend, like, you know, will it not fork successfully and quantum computing comes out and fucks Bitcoin and everything else that uses that type of security? Or during some kind of upgrade, will like Bitcoin end up failing, right? Like due to what we talked about before, they're trying to upgrade for something else, but it ends up putting some bug into Bitcoin and it fails. And then it kind of fucks it up and money moves to Ethereum. That, for whatever reason, becomes like the store of value because people don't trust Bitcoin because it just failed for, you know, a day or whatever. And it's like, now is it faulty? Right? Because it's doing, as long as it just does a block every 10 fucking minutes, it's like, it's money. Anyway,
next block.
So I don't know. So it's like my way of thinking and estimating probabilities and whatever. Yeah. But like most of the poker stuff, not really. So the long and short of it.
So you were talking a little bit about Ethereum, and I'm the ETH maxi, more of a layer 2 maxi, at least now, because I'm a narrative investor. Have you been following any of the layer 2s built on Ethereum, or are you just focused solely on Bitcoin?
I haven't been.
Okay.
I haven't been. I would say the last cycle I was a lot more following things. It's kind of fallen out over the last like 17, 18, very into learning a bunch of stuff. And this last one, kind of just stuff on Ethereum, not too much, a lot of NFT stuff. And then this time, now it's like very little. It's like I'm not even learning, and I'm just kind of like punting, trading, whatever's on like Deribit. I'm like, well, man, this is not the good options according to guys in my trading chat, but I'm just punting these to like, you know, try to make some money trading. So no, and I would be interested in hearing more. So, you know, what's going on? What's interesting about what's happening on layer 2 on Ethereum?
So it's similar to the Lightning Network built on top of Bitcoin. You know, when people want to transact on a layer 1 ETH, it can get congested, expensive, and that's where people are migrating their assets and bridging them over to Arbitrum or Optimism.
That's happening on like Arbitrum right now, right?
Yes, Arbitrum.
Is that what Arbitrum is?
Yes, it's a layer 2, and then, you know, I'll dive down the ecosystem and look at different, you know, perps or like different exchanges built on top of borrowing and lending on Arbitrum. But yeah, that's something I'm most bullish on is the layer 2s, and you know, the price action has been, you know, proving my thesis. But yeah, I'm really bullish on that. But I do want to say one more thing, because you said you have CryptoPunks, and I just made an investment in a sandbox plot of land. What do you think? I'm crazy? What do you think, that was just, you know, hyped up narrative that's blowing down, or do you see any future of the metaverse?
Man, so my thinking with the CryptoPunks was this. Like, I had been only Bitcoin for a bit, and then I moved some to Ethereum, like 0.025 or something. I timed this really well. It went up as it was going up, and the whole thing with the CryptoPunks, I started buying some CryptoPunks. And as it happened, and there was all these other NFTs, and I was like, should I invest in a bunch of other NFTs or just this? I sort of made a decision, and some of it was simplicity, and some of it was like a thesis that like, wow, okay, so one of the things about NFTs that I can see is happening right now is that these are pretty interesting, but it's like this thing where you can kind of make an infinite number of them. So like at some point, like most of these are probably not going to be worth very much. And you kind of probably just have to pick like the right ones, but some of the right ones that for whatever reason, like people like them, the community, like where they are historically in the NFT thing, whatever it is, like they kind of end up winning because people value them. Just like the way a lot of art isn't worth anything really, but then some art does end up being worth quite a lot, right? So like what I kind of decided early on was like, how much time do I really want to spend in the NFT thing? Like some, not that much. I kind of just made my decision somewhat early. I'm like, CryptoPunks are what I'm doing here, because I really think they have this, while they're not technically the first NFT, they are the first like PFP NFT. They kind of have this cool sort of like techno or whatever, what's the word I'm looking
retro,
for?
Like
retro tech, whatever that is, like vibe and
you made a good choice.
Where the providence of kind of becoming the first big one and whatever, and I just felt like there was a good chance that they would stick. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of like made my play, and it's just kind of like something where it sort of turned out that I got sort of bearish on ETH versus BTC in like 0.06 to 0.08 range, like with like a year later. I was just, so I moved all the ETH that I had moved back to Bitcoin, which ended up being a great trade. But I'm like, the ETH that I own is now punks. And I'm like, I kind of think maybe these punks, they were already doing better in ETH than what I bought then. And I'm like, I think this trend will continue. We'll see. My feeling on that is trend definitely won't continue if ETH becomes like the biggest coin. Like if it were to, take Bitcoin's place. But the way the market is right now, I think it might. So I don't know. So it's like, I don't know. You kind of have to make a decision. And thing is, I haven't spent a lot of time studying everything in the market and everything that's happening. After I kind of made this play, I've sort of moved out. Like I see a few things like, oh, Mad Lads, that's interesting, or this, or obviously I saw what was happening with like the Bored Apes, because they actually became for a while like the highest floor for a year or whatever, until the bear market just kind of tore them up. So, I couldn't really give you a smart opinion. I just think my feeling is that there will be NFTs that do well, and you should just think really carefully about like, what are the reasons why like this NFT will continue to be valued? Is it like, does it have some kind of provenance, some special place in history? Is there a really good community behind it of people that are just like passionate about it? Like not people who are just in this to flip it. Right. Because like, to me, that was like sort of the argument. I had a feeling, because I saw what was happening with Bored Apes, but it was like, they just keep hiring celebrities who don't really give a shit about it. And like, it was all marketing. And I'm just like, once times get tough, like that goes away. And sure enough, like, Bored Apes got trounced.
It was a top signal.
During the, it was definitely during the bear market, because, you need people that are passionate, and like, everybody's always going to be people in NFTs to flip it. But as long as you have a community of people that are passionate, that are that matters a lot. So there's, if you can find that in your NFT project, then, there's going to be other winners, in my opinion, than CryptoPunks. And even CryptoPunks, maybe it doesn't end up doing that well. Like, I do still really like the argument for it being it, but you never, like, to me, like, the argument for them, it's like, you're going to ask me, like, what do I feel stronger about? Is like Bitcoin or the CryptoPunks? Oh, Bitcoin. But I like the CryptoPunks play in the NFTs, but, they're also expensive. So it's kind of like a high entry point for some people. It's like buying a blue chip stock or something versus like, making a play on a small, like a penny stock or something in the middle in the NFT phase. So I couldn't give you a play on the sandbox. I would just say like that's the way I would approach it from like an analysis standpoint.
I kind of look at it like a 3x leverage play for ETH, and that's I would consider that a blue chip. Don and I actually have a bet. I think Ethereum flips Bitcoin, and I did make the bet this cycle. Do you know a chance?
This cycle?
Not the. No. Yeah, I said this cycle, but do you like in the future? I don't know.
I'll give you a really good reason why, and I do think it's possible it happens in the future, although unlikely from my viewpoint. But I'm not like a person who thinks it's impossible. Dude, there is no way. Like the biggest problem with Ethereum right now is that it's sort of like in this mode where it's trying to compete with L1s and like Bitcoin, sort of, right? Like the DApp L1s and Bitcoin. And man, it's not going to be Bitcoin in the monetary store value standpoint. It's just not. Bitcoin is more decentralized. Bitcoin like already has countries buying it. Bitcoin doesn't have a founder. It doesn't have the ETH Foundation. It's like, dude, ETH is making a transition right now from going from proof of work to proof of stake. And there might be a lot of reasons why that's a great idea. But that's a terrible idea in terms of it being the best money. Mm-hmm. Both because I believe proof of stake is worse for that reason, but also just the mere fact that it's doing that a small group of people made a decision to change that. You think countries and like are going to like buy a money that a small group of people can make a change? No, there's no way. So, but the other thing that it's trying to do is a huge thing. And it's like, I think that can coexist and ETH can be massive, maybe even more bigger in the future. Who knows, as being the L1, that's a very complicated argument. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows?
But the problem is that in order for ETH to win in that standpoint, like it needs to scale better, and it might. Like the proto dank sharding, upgrade is coming, and what's happening with the L2s and Arbitrum on ETH. But like right now, dude, I was involved with Virtue Poker, and their initial idea was to like do it on chain with Ethereum and this with the security. And I was like, wow, this is a great fucking idea. But they couldn't implement shit and it didn't work. And now like, it changed and they're running like a club, which is cool, but it's like not the original idea. And it just seems like every cool idea, like Augur, awesome. Like decentralized betting markets, probably with a super type spread. What happened? Doesn't work. Just like all these kind of good ideas, like none of them are really working yet on Ethereum. Like the only thing that really happens is like you stake money.
Yeah,
It's like, so I just think that ETH needs to like figure that out and really start, people can't pay these kind of gas fees, right? Like that can't happen on Ethereum. It's not like Bitcoin. Like people like to have like a DApp ecosystem where like all these transactions are happening and like running this little city. Like people have to be able to transact, I think, a lot and pretty cheaply. And so the scaling thing needs to get figured out. And so I think, to me, that's how ETH ends up succeeding from here. Like I don't think it can win going for Bitcoin's lane. I think it needs to stay in that lane. And like it'll get a little bit of the store of value thing for some other reasons, but in order to really win, it needs to compete with like Solana and whatever and kind of win there. That's my view on it. I don't know. What's your view?
See, he's excited. Like the ETF today was exciting for me for Bitcoin. It was exciting for him too, but like he's already in the mindset that like the ETH ETF is like next. Like that's next up this cycle. And for a lot of the reasons,
it is next up.
For a lot of the reasons that you just mentioned, I
don't know if it's going to happen. I'm just saying it is next up.
Well, if they're going to do one, it will be ETH. But I think for a lot of the reasons that you just mentioned,
in May, I think
it'll be tough for. I mean, if Gensler gave it such a hard time with Bitcoin, and you had no centralized player.
Apparently, Bitcoin got a 3-2. By the way, I just saw. I don't know. I don't want to say this confirmed. It was only a 3-2 approval.
And you said Gensler was on the yes side, right?
Gensler said yes.
He had to be.
There were two that said no.
Yeah, I seen
3-2. So, I mean, that's definitely not like 100% ETH is getting it later with the whole their whole thing. Like, is it a security or not? I'm not.
That's
my
point.
I'm just saying
that. That's my point. I just don't see the SEC.
Or somehow they wrote the "fuck you" thing at the end of the letter. At the end of the letter, they wrote this whole thing as like, and Bitcoin doesn't have any intrinsic value, unlike metals, and it's like used by criminals. And this, the SEC literally wrote that at the end of the letter. Like, we're not saying it's a merit-based ETF. It's like a walk-away middle finger. To
Gary Gensler's a whole conversation in and of himself. Being at MIT, talking about blockchain and thinking that he was going to be so great for the space, and then that obviously didn't work out the way we planned. I'll pivot back to the Bitcoin ETF though, because it's my understanding that tomorrow it starts trading. I don't know if that's confirmed, but
wait, hold on. Before we go back to the let's say that ETH, I do think it's happening later this year.
You think so? I disagree, but I no,
they're gonna make a ruling on it.
I
think it's very questionable as to whether or not they rule it. Now that I know it was 3-2, we'll see. I do feel like, to me, it'll be bullish for ETH. I mean, actually, ETH has already performed super well today. It was very interesting.
Actually, better than Bitcoin.
BTC was getting railed, and I was kind of thinking that inflows that would come in directly through. We haven't really got the ETF inflows coming in because those can only go to BTC. They can't go anywhere else, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is actually an anti-shitcoin argument to me this cycle, because inflows come in, go to Bitcoin. They're not an exchange.
And they're not going anywhere else.
One of the things that happen in other cycles is people on an exchange, their Bitcoin or Ethereum would go up, and then they'd sell it and like play other coins. They can't really do that. So, but like today, ETH pumped very hard. So the community viewed the acceptance as a time to rotate back. Now we'll see what happens when the inflows come in, and but like I know what people are talking about this exact thing today. I just want to say I do think it's weird. Like, ETH is kind of a weird, like, so one of the questions, for example, about the ETH ETF to me is, are they going to be allowed to stake it? like ETH to me is like kind of a weird thing to make an ETF for.
Yep.
Like, I'm not saying they shouldn't have one, but it's like, if ETH is just going to sit around and do nothing, theoretically, you would stake it. So what they're doing is because staking is the way the network gets secured, right? So it's weird to take all this ETH that people would be buying, have it go somewhere, and then not be staked, because, right? Like, it sort of doesn't make sense to me for the way that like ETH is moving to proof of stake, anyways. But like, I don't know. Maybe they'll end up sorting that out over time. Like, it'll be like, instead of keeping your ETF, you like have it in somewhere that stakes it, and you like split the staking returns with whoever's keeping it,
like a Lido or.
But then that requires another change of the protocol. That goes right back to my original thesis of like, ETH has these people that can make these decisions and change things at any given moment. If I'm a boomer and I'm holding this ETF, and then all of a sudden the Ethereum Foundation just changes things and it has this violent change in the ETF as a result of that, like, I'd feel some type of way. So the SEC has to think about that. And like you said,
what do you mean it requires a change in the protocol?
Well, like, you got the Ethereum Foundation in Vitalik making these choices. The proof of stake
but
was.
That is proof of stake now, right?
What's that? I'm
it
sorry.
It is proof of stake.
Yes.
Well, that change has already happened.
Yeah.
Right. But
yeah, I mean, theoretically.
What I'm just saying right now is I don't believe ETFs are set up. I believe, but I'm not certain that they're not set up in a way where if you're holding it, I don't know if the ETF would be allowed to stake it. I'm just saying that to me seems like a wasteful process.
Agree. Yeah, I agree.
Because, like, I think naturally if you had ETH sitting around, like, doing nothing, like what happens with crypto that would be in an ETF, you would stake it, right? Like, where Bitcoin, it's sitting around, it doesn't have much to do,
right?
But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, whatever.
Let's pivot back to the ETF, the Bitcoin one, real quick.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm assuming. I think Eric Balchanis from Bloomberg had said that they're going to be ready to go tomorrow, so they'll start trading tomorrow, I think. And we know that the exchanges, the amount of Bitcoin that's available to be bought, sold, traded on exchanges is relatively low compared to the overall market cap. I'm wondering what you think this will look like, especially with the halving coming up in 3 months. What kind of price action do you? Obviously, it's just speculation. Nothing set in stone. What kind of price action do you expect based on the limited supply that they have, these 11 or 12 ETFs to, purchase Bitcoin from, to hold, and with the halving coming and even less supply, being cut in half for them in 3 months, less than 3 months' time?
Well, first I'm going to say that I was long coming into today, and I spent my whole day at the computer, and I bought, which I told you guys before we went on, but I bought when the market was scarily like flash dumping 1,000 in like seconds, which was a little scary. And the reason why is because, well, first there was I'm sure there are a bunch of people that got liquidated and it sucks for them, but like from my perspective, it was pretty sweet because $6 billion in OI got wiped, funding, which was like ridiculous, got wiped, and I was kind of like, man, I'd like to like get more long coming into this, but this just like looks way too frothy right now, and I can't justify it. And then when we did that 45 to 40, boom, and this, and I was like, oh wow, this is one of the best long setups I've seen. Like, we just wiped all this OI, 10% drop, insta bought back up. Funding is now below par. It was like it was like 0.06, 0.07, whatever average was like insane, and now it's back to under 0.01. So so I was long coming into this. So that's my bias. Now that said, man, when I go on crypto Twitter and I see these like Bitcoin bulls, who in my opinion, I'm like, this is probably some fucking idiot who has like half a Bitcoin
or less,
and he's just like, oh yeah, man, it's going to million this cycle. Oh, dude, they're going to run out of Bitcoin exchanges. There's going to be dislocation. It's going to be 1 million in 2 months. These guys are fucking idiots. And it's like this type of discussion, it just like, it turns reasonable people away for multiple reasons. First, because reasonable people are also going to think they're fucking idiots. Maybe because they don't know, like, I know why this person is like going to be wrong, in my opinion. They don't really know, but they're just making this outlandish prediction that's going to turn them off and end up being wrong. So let me say why the prediction is going to be wrong. So first, okay, Bitcoin is never getting to 1 million in this epoch or the next epoch. I don't want to say never. It's like, I kind of want to say probably not till like 2040 or something at the soonest. It's possible if there was really some crazy shit that happened in the world, it happened first. But the real reason why is because you'd have to think about this, the mining emissions, how much Bitcoin's being created. Dude, this epoch, there is 900 Bitcoin a day being created.
Mm-hmm.
That means daily, just mining emissions. This isn't Bitcoin holders taking profit. You would need $900 million a day to enter into Bitcoin just to maintain a price of $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, hey baby, that's just possible, right? Next epoch, which is coming up in April,
yep,
you're going to need $450 million a day. Think about how much that is annually, right? It's like an insane number. So, or am I? That's just not happening. The way the market is right now, like Bitcoin's big, but it's not anywhere near big enough to possibly maintain that kind of inflows. And that doesn't even include holders who, if all of a sudden what they had went up like whatever the hell that is,
it's like 70%, I think. It was like
that obviously they would take profit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's number one about some of the pie in the sky things. But could it go up a lot? Okay, so yes, I don't think this is going to be a non-event like, say, the Coinbase IPO, where it was like ended up being a complete sell the news, which is why I'm long.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because my understanding is that these things are turning on tomorrow, that not only is there seed money, which is going to instantly buy, but that they're doing all these things like 0% for the first billion, 6 months.
ARK's doing 2.21.
Heard in podcasts that Eric and like James have done, and they've said that they think BlackRock has some money lined up for day one and certain things. So that's like a bullish thing that I do think there will be money coming in right away, right? There is the flip side of like how much selling will there be from grayscale people exiting GPTC now that the discount's finally gone.
Yep.
Or just moving, how much of it will be GPTC, which has fucked their holders by doing the 1.5% when everyone else is below 0.03 as just a way to tax all their assets under management. How much of that will just be moving from them under the other people, stuff like that. I don't know, but my tendency is bullish. But like, man, like I'll be surprised if we go over the all-time high in the next month. Much less.
I don't think that. Yeah.
100K or like I'll be pretty shocked if we did that.
I think
so
around
it's like
November.
Stuff like these guys are saying,
I mean, if we follow previous cycles, it should be another.
I'm personally looking more like the 50s. Like maybe we can get up to the 50s, something like 52, 55. Probably sell back off. Like I'm looking more like if we pump from here, at some point I'm going to look to not be like long any margin. At some point, because like I think we might sell like I didn't think it was going to be a sell the news thing, like it comes out today and we go down. We'll see. It remains to be seen, tomorrow and this weekend. But I do think it's going to be like maybe we'll go up, but that we won't really maintain it, just because we still haven't hit the halving. The inflows are going to be maybe a little slower than people think, stuff like that. But I try to see how things are on the market day to day and not say too married to like I'm making this call and I'm definitely going to trade it that way. Everything, like I said, everything's like a probability cloud of like what happens in the future. You have ideas, but they're just ideas, and you have to stay receptive to what the market tells you.
Yeah, if we stay typical to the previous cycles, we should reach an all-time high like 10 months from now. You know what I mean?
November.
We shouldn't breach 69 for another 10 months. So it's, we have this event that's unprecedented, but like you said, there's going to be people taking profits. There's a lot of unknown variables that none of us know. So it's kind of hard to predict that. Maybe that puts it off by a little and we come in higher before that, or maybe it makes it go, we go into the next year and then who knows? Like it's all unknown at this point.
Well, this run up has definitely, I do a lot of that. I mean, I have some charts and I've really analyzed the long-term stuff a lot. I mean, I had some sick bets. The biggest bet I've ever won actually at the lows at the very beginning of 2019 when it was in the 3Ks, I bet multiple people, Lyle Berman and Jason Mercier, you probably know
them.
both
Yep.
of them from poker, on Bitcoin hitting 50,000 by like 2023, and I got like a lot to win. The biggest bet I've ever won. And so it's like looking at the long term and this, and I made sure it was like I got enough time after the halving and all that. And so, you know, I look at those charts a lot, and so I'm very familiar with what you're saying. And I was definitely, it's like some months ago, I was approaching it that way. And I've started to realize like this ETF thing, you know, so we're going to see what actual inflows come in. But the move up that's now happened in preparation for the ETF has been a serious one. We're up pretty high now compared to the all-time high, and it's before the halving.
We really, in previous cycles, we're higher than we would be in relative to where we were before. I think I seen somewhere, I talked to him, like, I think if we pass 47 or 48, if we wick that and we like print that, that's actually represents a pretty significant number with previous cycles based on the bottom to the top of where we would be pre-halving.
I think the big answer to some of this is like how much money is going to flow in through the ETF. If it's underwhelming, I think we probably sell back off from here, you know, like maybe decently. And, you know, also like U.S. taxes, April 15th.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of somewhere around then might be like a good time to long again. Like we'll have just hit the halving. U.S. taxes. This will have been kind of a big year for crypto people, so might have to sell some to pay, you know, long-term capital gains or whatever they got to do, right? So I'm kind of gonna, you know, we'll see if the inflows for these ETFs are big, then, you know, maybe we don't get like a substantial dip. Maybe we just go sideways for a bit before, you know, like it's who really knows? Like
so many unknowns,
it does look like based on the fee war that just happened. Like, dude, these fees got cut down big time for like an exotic product.
Super low, yeah. Super low.
I'm in a room.
No, that's all good. I got a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old. It's all good.
So he's so I mean, the fee war happened, and not only that, they really want to entice people to come in, like zero for the first billion, zero for the first 5 billion for BlackRock, like pretty intense. And those numbers like billion, 5 billion. So if all of a sudden you have, billions of dollars coming in, like a decent amount, then I don't know. I mean, like that could cover, maybe the inflows end up covering, because listen, we've gone up a lot. They're probably going to be miners want to realize miners always got to pay the bills anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if miners are now pre-halving, selling into the ETF money coming in probably sounds good to some of them, plus maybe people, the thing is people don't know is you never know when a Bitcoin holder who Bitcoin's like a big part of their thing, they need money for something. At some point, like, even though most Bitcoiners hate fucking selling and probably, Ethereum, whatever, it's like, you don't want to sell your crypto bags. It's like at some point,
life events happen. Yeah.
You need to do something. You got to do something, right? So you never know with that kind of stuff too. We're up a lot. There hasn't been that much time where Bitcoin's been over, 45K historically.
Yeah.
Like, even
it's
though
crazy
it did
to think
get much
about.
higher than
that
much time above 45K. So, like, we'll see, man. Like, it's that's the fun thing about it is you never know. I will say this, that given the market's reaction to the ETF, how much we ran up, what it seems like has been going on, I have revised up some of my targets. If you talked to me 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I was probably thinking like 140K.
Top this cycle.
Like this cycle, and now I'm like, no way, man. I'm higher than that, and I'm not calling it, but like before I would have said there's no way we're doing 200, not happening, and now I'm like, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's on the table. What if? Yeah, it's on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. There's a lot of influencers out there that are calling like 500,000 this cycle, 1 million by like the next one. It's just like that's all for clicks and stuff like that, and you get it. But I think realistically,
some people actually believe it. But the problem is, it's like, listen, like I said, there are people that own half of Bitcoin. They don't really understand the way like money works. It's like, listen, man, you might never sell your half a Bitcoin. There's going to be some motherfucker who has 1,000 Bitcoin who, when that shit hits 150K, he's going to buy a mansion because he wants to enjoy his life. You know, the guy has 5,000 Bitcoin. He might buy a fucking sports team. You know, who the fuck knows? Like, you know, it's like Bitcoin's great, but, you know, so is also doing cool shit in your life. And at some point, like, you know, it is what it is. And that is the way, that's like part of the beauty of it. Because as it rises and people sell, it's the distribution of coins as they come out. Because I'll tell you what isn't going to happen. Another reason beyond just the miner emission, another reason why Bitcoin doesn't hit 1 million is when it's too centralized with a group of people. It's not going to happen. It's like the people who have a lot, it needs to go up and they need to sell it.
Yeah.
So that more people have it. Like that will be that's part of the way that more people are part of the network, more people own, that it gets bigger, like, and becomes, you know, like this monetary asset.
Agreed.
So it's part of it too. And that takes time. And it doesn't happen like all at once. I don't want to say it's impossible for it to happen all at once, but it's just extremely unlikely for it to happen all at once. You know, all at once thing, like some crazy shit happening in the world that I don't know, like, yeah.
One of the best things I think that happens, like what you were just saying, is like when we top out every cycle, like a lot of these big wallets, these big whales, quote unquote, start selling some of their coins, which gets distributed to the other people to get more of the network. You know what I mean? Looking at it from a price perspective, people get upset because you see 69, you see go all the way down to 15, and there's a lot of events that led to that. But like guys like us, like regular normal people and others are like, hey, it's not 69 now, and you know, they might have gone down the rabbit hole like us, and they start seeing it at 35, 25, 20, and then they get pieces that they never would have got if that thing goes from 69 and it just keeps going, right? We don't want, like, to get more sats, you don't want it to keep going. Like, you want the best times to buy is when they dip. So like even me, I don't want $1 million this cycle. Like, I want to be able to keep this thing going and keep growing this wealth that I can pass down to my kids. And if it rockets off, then whatever I got, that's it. And it's there. What's the fun in that? Like,
well, it's happening slowly, and part of it is it's a way of moving the coins from the non-believers and the impatient to the patient believers. Because, like, dude, who are the people that buy assets when they go down 90%? Fucking people who believe in it.
Yeah, conviction.
Especially if you already own some of it, because most people sell that shit by the time it gets there or when it gets there. They're like, fuck it, like, I'm out. You know, like, wow, I've already lost half on this. I'm out right now. Like, you know, but if you believe, you're like, no, man, like, this is the time to buy. I mean, I forget who said this, but some billionaire like Druckenmiller or whatever said, like, one of the reasons he started investing in Bitcoin is it's the only asset he's ever seen.
Paul Tudor Jones said it.
Like,
yeah.
Paul Tudor Jones, like, fall like 80 or 90%. And it's like only some small X% of people sold. And, you know, like, I know a guy, I don't want to say on air, who literally, like, he was in 2018, he was like long on margin, and, you know, he's a wealthy guy. And so it's not exactly the same example as you're saying, but it's like he kind of got blown out. He's probably annoyed at losing some of his Bitcoin when it fell down to 3K. So he sold his PJ and bought more BTC. And he had been in BTC, I think, from around the time when you got it.
Yeah.
He was like a long believer, he was telling his friends about it. Like, you should put 10% of your net worth in Bitcoin, send out emails, all this stuff. And it's just like, you know, like, I wish I got that email in 2013 because I was like, this guy, I think he's a really smart dude. But it's just like, you know, the hardcore believers, it's like the thing that saves the bear market isn't new users. It's the hardcore believers who have had a fuck enough, and they're like, what the fuck? You know, in 2019, 3,300, this was just 20K. It's time. It's time. I got to buy. We got to find cash and buy. You know, just last time, FTX went out, 16. Dude, I lost money FTX. I was tilted balls, and I didn't really have a lot of cash. So unlike the previous bear, I didn't really get to, like, unload into it. But I knew that shit was the bottom when it was happening. Because
we started this podcast
everybody
around that time.
14,000. Everybody was saying 14,000 even before FTX failed. Every bear was like 14. That's the next step. FTX went out, and we didn't even go to 14. I was like, wow, okay, that's it. This is the buy. FTX, second biggest exchange in the world. That's a big event where, you know, a year, 15 months from the halving, this FTX goes out. 20K was going to be the bottom. Now it's this, and we didn't even go to 14, which was what everybody thought was going to happen. whatever. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, man. It's just like, it's a good, what I tell people, and again, it might be a little contrary to what you said earlier, but like, I'll tell people, like, Bitcoin at 45 is so much less risky than when I was buying it at 300. Because at 300, like, we didn't know if this was going to really work. Like, I didn't get my true conviction. Like, when I was like, the light bulb super went out for me, like the 17 to 20 frame is when I was like, yeah, this is it. Like, I really, really understood it. 13 to 17, I'm trying to make money. I'm trying to make more fiat. That's what I came in for, right? So I'm buying this thing hoping it goes up so I can realize some fiat gains. And it was risky then because I didn't know. I didn't know if I was going to continue to make money in this until I actually realized. And then now today with, Wall Street putting the stamp of approval and big wig boomers will have ETFs with Bitcoin in it now. It's like we said, we started this off by saying like the chances of it failing are so small. Whereas back in 2013, 14, there was a plethora of reasons that we could have named, unknowns that could have caused it to fail. So like getting people in, like that's the selling point that like we try to tell in this podcast here is like, it's never been safer to invest in this long term. Again, if you're investing like you invest in your 401k, 403bs and stuff like that, you put your paycheck money in every 2 weeks and you're not looking at it for 20 or 30 years. Like this is what you should be doing in this asset class. Don't try to trade it like Johnny B. Trader and be something that you're not when you're a teacher and you're focused on that and you're not focused on charts. You're not going to be able to do that. Buy it, put it away. Don't think about it until 30 years or 20 years.
It's news as well.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole plethora of things that they have to do.
There's a lot of stuff but yes. No. A way that I really like phrasing it is this. It's like about your time preference.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, listen, if you have to pick something, like let's say you have this and you can't sell it, you just have to hold it for like the rest of your life. To me, within crypto, I'm like, I got to put $1 million, into something in crypto and I can't sell it for the rest of my life. Like the choice is Bitcoin and it's like not even fucking close.
Agreed.
And I granted the fact that maybe one day Ethereum could be worth more than Bitcoin. I do see that being a possibility, but it's just like from a Sharpe ratio perspective of like, what are the odds of this bet working out? Like, I don't think there is anything in crypto that touches Bitcoin's like chance of working out in terms of like the successful, like, let's not say how successful, but just like the successful like run of the asset to like achieving what the people today, and maybe not like the hyper Bitcoin people, but just average people think like kind of digital gold, this worth multiple trillions, whatever. Like, Ethereum's got to finish the proof of stake. It's got to make scaling work and do this and whatever. It's like, is it going to do it? Probably. And it has more competition. Like Bitcoin doesn't have competition. Like other proof of work assets in the crypto space, like Bitcoin's worth like high 90 something percent compared to any of them.
Yeah. Litecoin. Yeah.
It's just like, so to me, if you're just like, I'm trying to save something, I'm not going to trade, I'm just holding this. What is it? Like, what would I keep? The answer is Bitcoin, and it's so not even close. And I think like even once you start getting out of crypto, like I'm so deeply orange pilled that the answer is Bitcoin versus almost anything else to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe the rest of my life, real estate has pretty good argument. I would never pick a company over Bitcoin. Who the fuck knows what's going to happen in 40 years? Like you're trying to predict whether Google or this is going to be successful on that long a time horizon. I don't know.
Like Radio Shack.
But like, yeah, but maybe it would have to be something like real estate. And to me, things like that are like really nice because I like to like make, and I don't want to say I don't update my decision making and update my thinking. I'm trying to constantly like learn and see what's happening, but it's like nice to just buy something and walk away, right? Like what I don't want are things that own or invest that like take up a lot of my time. So it's like, to me, my like great barbell investing thesis, both for this reason, but primarily also because of like, one is like very, very kind of risky and volatile compared to the other one is like Bitcoin and real estate. Real estate creates cash flow that comes in. and it's like kind of, you just like buy it and walk away, you know, just kind of goes up. You have to pay some money for certain things. You get a property manager and you don't worry about it. Right. Same thing with Bitcoin. And it's like, I just like that, because what I want to do is, and one of the reasons like I got into poker is like, I don't want things that are demanding my time other than what I want to give my time to. It's like, my time is the most precious thing in my life. And I don't want the money things, demanding more of my time than I want. So, and that's why it's like, to me, like the idea of running a company, it's great. It can be a great way to make money, but like, I'm never going to do that. I've already ruled it out. And it's just like dealing with the nonstop list of like have to do this every day, talk to this person, whatever. Like, no, fuck that, So thank God I'm good at poker. I don't have to deal with that shit. So, I'll put my money and stuff that I put it in, I'll walk away,
I mean, we could wrap it up there. Let you get back to your family. Thank you very much for your time. This was awesome.